So if you press the little arrow button on the left here, so if you go over the left, you see a tiny little arrow, and if you press it, you see we get all of our contacts here. So this is the same drop down that we have over here, and these are a lot of contacts in Houdini. And like if you've watched maybe some Houdini tutorials in the past, you know everybody's talking about chops, pops, cops, all of these different contacts. So these are a couple of these contacts. You can see them over here as well. And this might be a little bit more of a familiar interface to people using, for example, Cinema 4D or Maya. Like this will be the outliner. And you can see this is our object level. So what we're in here is our object level, which will contain our objects. So these are object nodes, basically. They're called geometry nodes. But they are objects and they contain stuff in it. So if we click on the little plus icon here, and let's say we're gonna click again on it, you can see there's a box inside our box. It's basically boxception. So what does this actually mean? Well, if we click the box, so you can see all of our other stuff became ghosted. That's what the viewport does by default. So if you click over here, you can see show other objects, hide other objects, or ghost other objects. Because we're in a different level now, and when you show all other objects or ghost other objects, it will show the stuff from like the object level. So, but right now we're just inside the network of our box. And inside the network of our box, we're inside of SOP level. So SOP is SOP, Surface Operator. So that's why it's called SOP, it's a central surface operator. And surface operator is gonna like surface operators operate on each of the individual data types. That was what I was like talking about before. That's why I wanted to do the little introduction first. So this is where we can manipulate different parts of our object. If we're like on object level here, or we can only manipulate the entire object in its entirety. But if we're in SOP level, we can start manipulating individual points or primitives. So let's start doing that. Let's first delete all of our other stuff here, and let's zero out our box, because the transformations here will be world space transformations. So that means that everything inside here, so our box here will still be in 0, 0, 0 space, but then the entire network here will after that be transformed in world space to whatever is set here. But this will make more sense later on, but let's for now just zero everything out. So at least we know we're working in the center and that there won't be any discrepancies between what we're going to do in here and then what we're going to do in here. For example, what you would do is like you could, for example, make an explosion here inside of SOPs, and then you could say in object, okay, I'm going to place it over there. So just like that's roughly how something like that would work. Anyway, so let's zero out our box or just make a new box. You can also just like delete it and then click on the box again. And then we have a box. And by the way, you also get some controls over here when you create something from the shelf tools, which, for example, these are the, like, for example, the size of our box. And you can see that this doesn't change the scale. This is because this is linked to the stuff that's happening on SOP level. But let's discuss that a little bit more when we head inside SOP level. So let's do that. So we're here inside SOP level, and maybe let's put our view. So over here we have different viewer stuff. So I already showed you the ghost and hide other objects. On the left, you can say the shading type. So for example, I can put it to wireframe and I see a wireframe, or I could put it to line invisible, but let's put it to smooth wire shaded. So now we see our basically our object with our wireframe on top. So on this SOP object here, we now have individual control over stuff on our box. So let's say, for example, the axis divisions, let's make them 4 by 4 by 4. And then you can see we get some extra lines. So we have some extra geometry to work with. And if I press S on the keyboard, you can see I get to, I can select these individual elements. And if I want to change some parameters like the scale of this box in the viewport, I could select it here and then press enter in the viewport, and then I get these red controls, and that will allow me to sort of to stretch it in and out. You can see that I'm also changing stuff on the parameters, similarly like we did before. But now that we're over here, we can start making edits on our actual geometry. All right, so here inside SOP level, we can make edits to our actual geometry. So if I use the 2, 3, and 4 keys on my keyboard, I can switch between point selections, edge selections, and primitive selections. And if I press 5, I get vertex selections. You don't use that in the viewport that much, but that's how you can do that. And if I press 1, it goes back to like complete object selection, but you will see we will jump up a level. So you can see we jump up to a certain level. All right, so we can start making some edits. And by the way, you can also switch between them over here. So with these buttons on here, so points, edges, and primitives. But of course, with the hotkeys, it's a lot faster. So let's say we might want to do an edit on our on our points. So let's select a point, and then let's say we want to translate it. So what happens if we press T like we did before? So you can see it puts down an edit node. So for all these operations, Houdini will always put down a node. So all of the stuff you will do will be contained in this node. And the edit node is one of the few actual destructive nodes inside of Houdini. What that means is that the edit node is not really procedural on itself. Like if you do more operations than one, it will just keep iterating on itself. So let me show you what I mean. So I can, for example, drag out this point here, and you can see the position change. And now let's say I maybe want to do like a soft fall off. So it will open up the parameters for this thing, and I can just drag this out, and you can see that it will do a soft fall off. So you can see the group is set to 31, and it's because our point numbers. You can highlight your point number here and primitive numbers, and so that's all done on the sidebar here. So let's highlight point numbers. You can see it's highlighted on point 31. So let's say if we make this 32, we do the same operation on point 32. So that's just the group for now. Let's say we want to do another transformation. We want to do it on a primitive. So let's select a primitive and then move it. You see it overrode it. So this is one of the few nodes that won't drop this down by it. This won't be procedural by itself. If you want to do something like that and keep that procedural, you could drop down your own edit node. So how I did that was I pressed tab here in the viewport and then pressed edit. So typed edit, and then with shift enter, I appended to the thing here. I could also just click on it and then drop it down somewhere and then collect the output to the input. So if I were to do it like this, now I could select a primitive here, and then I'd have these two transformations by itself. So doing stuff like this, so just simple transformations, Houdini will often drop down these nodes by itself. So let's say we want to do some modeling type operations. Let's say we want to extrude a primitive here. So we have these shelf tools over here. And let's say we want to change some stuff on the polygons. So that would probably be under the polygon tab. So if we go to polygon, you can see there's a poly extrude button here. So if we press that, you see we get an extruder. So we can extrude a polygon like that. And you can see it puts down a extrude node. So if I click it again, it puts down another extrude node. And I have options here, for example, to twist it. I could also press Q on the keyboard, and then it will put down another. It will just redo the operation, so I could extrude it again. And because of the procedural nature of Houdini, I could, let's say, go to the previous one here, and I could change the twist. You can see, because that's procedural. If I change the divisions, yeah, it's also working. So I could make it a little bit smoother. But you might say, well, it's not super user-friendly to do it like this. But let's do a couple of more edits. So let's try polybevel. So let's select the actual good edges. Then press polybevel. We need to do it. Sorry, we need to do it after the last node, else it gets confused. So let's select the last node and then press polybevel. We can bevel the edge, for example, and then say we want to chamfer it a little bit. So we made ourselves a little model, but it wasn't like super user friendly, right? Because we were going through these, through the taskbar here. So there's also a more user friendly way to do that if you want to start doing some poly modeling stuff. I don't model that much in Houdini. I'm not a modeler myself. I do model occasionally, but it's perfectly fine to actually model in Houdini. It's probably not as fast and maybe user friendly as some other packages, but it's perfectly capable of doing modeling as well, even though a lot of people think of it as just a FX package. But let's show another way to do some modifications. So what I could also do is, let's say I want to do another bevel. So let's say I double click on these edges, so you can select edges. Like if you click one and you hold shift, you can select more edges. If you double click, it will select a loop. So if I were to do this over here, it will select the entire round thing because that's a proper loop. This is also a proper loop. If I do it over here, it's not a proper loop, but if I hold A and then shift, I should be able to. So if I hold A, and then you can see it allows me to easily slow. A will allow me to sort of do this, to like have it grow this selection like this. Let's select it like this. Now let's do another poly bevel, but let's not use the shelf tools. If you press C on your keyboard, you get this little pop-up menu. And this pop-up menu is sort of context sensitive depending on what this thing is set to. So now it's set to poly modeling. That will mean the window will be set up for poly modeling. So if I press C, you can see I get a whole bunch of options here. So let's say I can now go to poly bevel, and then you see it will put down poly bevel, and then we beveled our node. And you can do this for like other, and you see the drop down on other node, by the way, because this is the old poly bevel. I don't think they updated the shelf tool for the new one yet. So this is the old one, this is the new one. So that's why it looks a little bit different, but that doesn't really matter that much for this tutorial. Let's do some more modifications. Let's press C and maybe do a poly extrude. Let's extrude something out. You can see we can just, and then press Q. And you can see we can do simple poly modifications like this. So it's just a simple sort of way to quickly do some adjustments. I could say poly split, and I could do it like this, and press enter, and now I split these polygons, and then I have this, and then I get like poly extruded. Some things have submenus, but you can poly extrude it, and I could like select this, and I could like poly bevel it. So you can see this probably is actually quite a sort of a way more user-friendly way to sort of do some modeling type operations. You can see Houdini will just, if I press Ctrl B, by the way, in the viewport, I can like maximize a view. You can see Houdini drop down all of these nodes. So these are SOP nodes, so service operator nodes. So these operate on different services. So yeah, that's just like simple doing some poly modeling type things inside of the viewport. Right, so let's delete maybe what we did here, and maybe let's showcase some of a little bit of the procedural nature of Houdini when using these modeling tools. So let's make a sphere. Let's type sphere, and we're so on the object level, type sphere, and then let's double click on it to go in it, and let's put the sphere to on the parameters here. Let's put it to polygon. Polygon mesh, so we get a quad mesh. And let's do something that kind of blew my mind when I opened Houdini for the first time, and I tried it like that. Let's do a very simple sort of procedural, semi-procedural thing. All right, so let's select all of these edges in the top, and let's delete them. So let's delete the top parts of the sphere. So if I press delete, and you can see it put down a blast node to blast away these points. All Right, so now let's start putting down some manual nodes by ourselves. So let's say we make a transform node. So let's type transform and then press Shift Enter. And then this transform node will allow us to transform the geometry that's here. So let's say we move this up. So we move it up, and what we can do is we can template the thing that we did before here. So if you hover over this thing and you press the purple button here, you can see we can get like a ghost of what we had before. So if I now transform it, you can see what where it was coming from. And now what I want to do is I want to rotate this one 180 degrees. So we can also type it in here, 180 degrees. So now we have this sphere moved up and then down. And now let's what we can actually do inside of Houdini is we did these two operations. And because Houdini is like procedural, so this is like the history of the operations that we did. We can switch between these operations. So what we can also do is if we type merge, what this will do is we'll merge together these two operations that we did. So now we have two spheres and they're facing each other with these holes that we made. So again, this is one of the core concepts of Houdini. You do something, you can transform it, and you can actually merge it back in with a previous version of it. Now let's say what we can do is let's press S to select stuff, and then do some edge selections. We need to, by the way, we need to highlight our merge node because we're gonna do something after our merge node. Now let's double click on the ring here. So we have a ring selection for that thing. And now let's maybe do a bridge, a poly bridge. So we can do it either by pressing tab and then typing poly bridge, or I think it's also inside the C menu here. You can go to poly bridge. So let's do it. Let's do poly bridge. And now on the bottom here, you can see a text appear, and it's going to ask us to to select the destination polygons or edges. So this is often what Houdini will do if you use the shelf tools or if you put down nodes inside of the viewport. So if we're working like inside of the viewport here, it won't do it most of the time when you like put down nodes yourself. But if you put down nodes here, it will start asking you for stuff like this. So what do we want to bridge? Maybe we want to select some edges on the other sphere here. So we did that. And now let's press enter. So enter will complete the tool basically. Enter, and you can see now it bridged these two spheres, and we get like a cool connection between them. I mean, now we have like a halter. What do you call it for the gym? Like a weight, I guess. But the system here that we made is procedural system. I can change the divisions here. So what I can actually do, and that's actually like really cool. And this was something that I tried like I think on my first day when I started doing Houdini. So what I can do is like I have this transform that I did before, right? I can start moving this. So now you can see that this operation here will be applied based on what I do here now. So it's a really cool like procedural system. So again, I can like start moving this. So I'm moving this here. So it's an actual procedural operation, and like we can go in here, and we can still change the subdivisions. So this is like a really, I mean, this kind of shows you how cool Houdini is. Like you can do really cool stuff, and this really shows in a very simple way if you weren't aware of what proceduralism is and what the working way of Houdini is. It's like I'm using the two outputs, or previous output and the new output, merging them together, and then do an operation on both of them. So these share sort of the same history, merging together and doing the bridge. So I thought it's like it's a kind of interesting way to show the Houdini procedural nature. And of course, you can do other operations now on this as well. And what I could also do, for example, is let's say, okay, I want this thing to be bigger. I could go back to this node here. So select that one, I can then press this little arrow icon here. You can see then it gets back the selection that I made. Now I can say, maybe I want to also include these. So now I selected these, press enter. Now it deletes all of those. And I can go back to Poly Bridge. And you can see now it made the bridge bigger. So yeah, that's those are like kind of operations you can do in Houdini. Now, of course, I can do additional operations, like I could select these edges and I could say, okay, I want to bevel these edges, rounded. So now I made like a more round thing over there. And again, this will all be completely procedural. So I'm moving like this. I could do other operations, like I could say over here, let me put it to a wire shaded. I could like select a couple of these polygons and then say I want to poly extrude, then extrude this out and then do some divisions and then maybe twist it a little bit. Maybe inset a little bit. So now we have this thing. And again, if I were to move this now, you can see this will propagate like you expect. One thing is because we're now using polygon selections, like if I were to change the poly bridge here, you can see this thing will sort of move because the point count will change. So that's something we need to keep in mind later when we start doing some more procedural networks, is that maybe we want to try to avoid using actual point selections and primitive selections as much as possible. But that's something for later. So maybe just now go ahead yourself and maybe play around with just edit nodes a little bit, and then we're gonna dive more into different types of things that we can do inside of Houdini.